We have some topic this morning. As I was thinking about this topic of being triggered, and Vera was saying before we started that the word triggered is triggering. So maybe we have to find another word, but I haven't found a good one. Um, but we have the word activated, set off, um, even upset. As a visual, it's almost like you're getting turned upside down. Um, I think of it as kind of being just all of a sudden plunged into another self state. So this experience is one of the most um, painful, conflict producing, um, potentially destructive kinds of experiences that all of us have. I think that when I began doing groups, my purpose was to make a group safe. And do we ever really think about what that means? To make a group safe would be to preclude anybody getting triggered. So I would be very, very careful about what topics were brought up and how the structure of the group was, so that we wouldn't have any terribly painful, traumatic experiences of people getting triggered. But I found through the years that that didn't really work. And then I thought, well, can people be trained and taught maybe by focusing? Focusing can do miracles. Maybe with enough focusing, people won't get triggered. And I won't get triggered. It's the scariest thing, I think, for all of us when we get triggered. And sometimes when we get triggered and we're leading a group and we get triggered, or we're teaching a class and we get triggered. So I found that it didn't work to say, oh, we're going to teach people not to get triggered. It doesn't happen that way. So then what do we do with this phenomenon? What do we do with this human experience? I'm going to come to my conclusion right away, and then we'll explore the question more. My conclusion is that we can't preclude or prevent people from getting triggered, and um, we can't convince a person that's triggered that things are okay, or that it isn't the way they see it. It's an altered state. We can't expect somebody who is triggered to be responsible for the triggeredness. And so my conclusion is that the group has to make it safe if somebody gets triggered. And the group has to understand that experience and not say, what's wrong with them for saying this and that or doing this and that, right? But to understand that experience of just getting swept away by something. So let's just start with centering and taking some breaths. And of course, this focusing attunement helps with being triggered. Settling in our bodies, just feeling ourselves. sometimes this gesture helps me sort of holding myself. What is this self? What is this self that I am? This self that I have? This mysterious self? Being interested in the miracle of the self and recognizing that this self is an incredible system that goes way, way out. It's also a system that, like everything else in life, protects itself. And being triggered is one way that it protects itself. It's like having a high fever. Just honoring that self in all of its complexity and breadth of expression. Sort of sending love and interest, wonder at this self that we are. Okay, and now let's connect with each other, see our ingredients of conversation this morning. Very nice to see everybody. So what is this word triggered? How would you describe what you believe this phenomenon is? Vera gave a wonderful description. Maybe you could do it again, Vera. I recorded, this was before we started. I recorded it, but maybe it's fresh in your mind and you could tell us what that word means to you.
Well, whatever the word is, the experience is something like being taken over, or like there's hardly any left of really me or something. And like something sets me off or something happens and suddenly I'm not me. Like I'm controlled by something else, something that doesn't feel like me. Maybe something like that.
Yes, controlled by something that doesn't feel like you.
Mm.
And how about other people? What is it like? What does the word mean?
Hi. To me, it does feel like something in me. Does not feel like it's completely not me, but it's definitely something in me that is responding from different perspectives. This year and now, and also the back then, and many back then, possibly, and many ways I may have been back then, developmentally, psychologically, culturally, all of that.
So it feels like you, but it's a you with a different perspective that is shaped by many different past experiences.
And probably not the whole me, right?
Not the whole you, right?
Mhm.
I feel danger and alertness, but a thinning of myself and a clenching. When I said a thinning, I mean kind of a, oh, yeah, I can feel this in my body. then, you know, a tightening, alertness, it's danger.
Danger. Yeah. Yeah. Almost like it's an emergency.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's an emergency, this danger. Yeah. Like a fire alarm.
Mm-hmm. Breathing changes, shallow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Good morning, Susan.
Hey, Pauline.
Hi. I think we haven't decided whether we reflect. So rather than just kind of coming in and not acknowledging that you were the last one speaking, I wanted to say hello to you.
Mm.
Yeah. And
Well,
I'm actually your word danger, you know, so that someone is feeling danger, you know, I'm really in two minds, actually. That's a good way to start. In two minds between the, you know, what's been triggered and what's been contributed. You know, it's kind of like passion, or we've often said that we used, was it Winnicott that jumps in the spitting in the soup, you know, or provocation, you know. When I read this, I was really alarmed by where it was coming from, because it would say it's someone whosever's narrative this is, it can lead to a kind of accusing, defending, and blaming that rips through groups, or rips communities and groups apart. And I'm thinking, as long as I've been on Help the Helpers, I've never seen anyone being ripped apart, you know. And what scares me about this is the level of control that I might feel in not responding to my spontaneous self. You know, it's that psychology, or that, you know. So and I see it in groups, you know, and particularly in American politics, that there's a group of people around and they're not actually responding at all. And as a result of those lack of response, there has been people's limbs being torn apart, you know. So I suppose psychology and the escaping the trap of perfection that we sometimes do in psychology, you know, it's that would scare me worse than anything else, you know. That my danger signals would be numbed and dehumanized by being afraid to get things wrong. But that's my opening bid.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Pauline. You're speaking for
myself.
You're speaking for yourself, but also for the side of this complex issue that in trying to control the situation so that people won't be triggered, upset, set off, whatever, that we can take away the relational spontaneity and freedom that we need, that is the life of groups.
Well, I don't know who the we is. See, I think that when we're talking in abstraction, it becomes dogma. You know, it's like, so interaction first is what we know, and a resonance. So that when we're talking about something as if, you know, then we really are very safe ground. It's not real. We're not in relationship. Whereas it's taking responsibility for relationships, you know, and when that's not actually active or real, then we are really only talking about, and that is very without soul in my in my experience. It's not real.
What I got from what you said, Pauline, is that you're making a bid or a plea or a suggestion that the attempts to prevent people from getting triggered can can be even more dangerous than people getting triggered. Did I get that message right?
Yes, thank you, Lynn. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's kind of like there's 4 or 5 balls there, but I'd catch one of them, you know, and what I catch is your kindness and your intention to understand, you know, so I feel in relationship with you, you know. So it's like to go back over that. But I'm only one person on the call, you know, so it's not that important to me that I be understood by you, but it would be important that I wouldn't lose my context, you know. So because of sitting listening to an awful lot of dogma and tripe, you know, over the years from religious, but also psychology as well, you know. So thank you for that. I kind of want to back off now. Thank you.
Religion and psychology gives us lots of dogma, but
Yes,
we're trying to come back to our experience here this morning. And does anybody else want to talk about your own experience?
I want to talk about some dogma because I want to trigger Pauline.
You do?
Yes, she enjoys it. Anyway, the dogma I wanted to talk about is what Anne Weiser Cornell would say. She would say that, you know, we're in self in presence, and now a protector has taken over.
yes.
So, and this IFS has a similar version, although we'd probably say this is a firefighter in this case.
Right. A protector or a firefighter is taken over. I love that description.
And to respond, I do enjoy you, Jim. I do enjoy you because I feel safe with you, but I don't really enjoy being. I think you said that I enjoy something, but anyway, because it's relational, you know, and I know it's safe, or that I can tidy it up again when we get it wrong, you know.
Yes, tidy it up again when we get it wrong. I like that. Lip.
Oh yes, I think the 2 words that has been said about emergency and alarm going off is very helpful for me because I can then know that, oh, I need to be careful here. We need to have special attention here. And it's less personal because like in any emergency, we want to look at the whole situation. So the 2 words, alarm going off and emergency, I find very helpful because it means there is some case required and it requires a timely response that would not be causing more harm.
It requires
so that's very helpful.
a calming response that wouldn't cause any more harm. Yeah. It feels when I'm triggered, it feels as if there is harm about to happen or has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that I need to protect others or myself, as if there were a fire.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else, your own experience of this and what you call it? Are you one of the people that hates that word?
I've got something, Lynn.
Yeah.
Mikhail put something in the chat earlier that was definitions of these words, and it brought me back to an experience I had where apparently I triggered other people because I was raised in a military family and I used a lot of military terminology and people didn't like it. So I started thinking about the word trigger and I wonder when it became negative because by itself it's neutral. And then I remembered Gendlin saying, if you want to get your meaning of a word out, put a second word with it. Because I thought about the times that I have been triggered into a place of joy because something playful was going on, something fun was going on, and that's a trigger, but not to a trauma. So I came up with a trauma trigger as opposed to pulling the trigger, which gets used in business a lot, or other meanings of trigger.
Trauma trigger. I think that's good.
So,
I
could I say something?
Yeah.
I can remember what it is. First, I wanted to just, I don't have a big reflection of Barbara, but I really like the idea of acknowledging that someone has said something. So I'm acknowledging. You said something about different meanings and feelings about trigger, particularly when you're raised in the armed forces, which is a little scary. That's not what I raised my hand, even though I didn't raise my hand to say. It's a little, I mean, that triggers me a little. That in the armed forces, trigger is not triggering is a little frightening, if you see what I mean. That desensitization itself. But that's not what I wanted to say. What did I want to say? Oh, this phenomenon that I find very interesting about triggering is I'm sorry if somebody said this before when I was dealing with the plumber who was here, but that triggering for me often starts with just a feeling and then a memory or the content comes afterward. I find that very interesting that there's a level where the body or something, I wouldn't really call it the body specifically, but there's a, but I don't know why. And then it may come to me or I may have to ask myself. So it's so, it's kind of beyond words that demonstrates that it's beyond words. Similar to a phenomenon. I don't know if anybody here has ever had this, but I've had this a lot where I'll meet somebody or I'll see somebody and they're not that familiar to me, but I feel that same something here not right. And then it comes to me, oh, that person looks like somebody who, I don't know, was my fourth grade teacher and was mean to me. A whole level before the words and the concepts come.
Yeah. Yeah. Perhaps in response, I could read this that I found on Facebook this morning. Your body notices what your mind tries to move past. The tension, the hesitation, the quiet, light tightening before you say yes when you mean maybe or no. Not because something's wrong, but because something in you is paying attention and it hasn't forgotten how to recognize what feels true, even when you've learned not to listen.
I love that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Narit?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I very much agree with Liz. She took the words out of my mouth in a way. But to me, trigger is a memory. And it's also an overwhelm. That's how I feel that. I
Yes.
feel it's very much in the nervous system and it's like activates something of protection, whether it's whatever that is, but it also takes you out of present moment and it sort of transfers you to another time. That's how I sense that. Like something is taking over and I'm being transferred to another moment in my life or something like that, an earlier time, and I react to that moment rather than the present moment.
Yes, yes, yes. I love that description. Yes.
Yeah.
Sort of being swept away, being captured by something.
Yes.
Being like a bug caught in the web of something.
Yes.
Big
Yes.
thing. And it's so bodily, it's so physical.
Very physical, yeah.
And Marvin has his hand up.
Yes. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Lynn. Sorry. Good morning or good afternoon.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So trigger seems to be the start of, to go back to what Liz was saying, the start of a phenomenon. It's what starts the phenomenon, but actually it might be somewhere in the process.
It might be, say that again, Marvin?
Somewhere in the process.
Not starting it, you mean?
Something may have get birth somewhere, and like if you look at army, there's an order given before the trigger is pulled.
Uh-huh. So you're saying it's a process, not that it can feel like all of a sudden someone said this and my whole body is clenched.
Yeah.
But it's part of a process.
Yeah. And it may have a starting point somewhere. I don't know.
Yes. And Dorothy. You're muted, Dorothy.
I'm loving this conversation. It's like I'm really relating to everything everyone has said and want to take it all in. One of the things that jumps out at me is this feeling of lack of control. All of a sudden, I'm like, I'm not in control of my thoughts, and the words that come out, I'm not in control of.
That's right.
And that's very disturbing. And depending, the other piece that I'm very aware of is that the dynamic involved, the relational quality, like who it is I'm most triggered by. And there's a continuum there, but the one I'm most triggered by could be my daughter. And just what everybody said about the replay of your earlier circumstances. It's like, no matter how much I know intellectually, it's still this piece that it's not, doesn't feel it's under my control. And, no matter how many, workshops I take on it, it's like, it still feels like it's beyond my control to some extent. But I'm trying to incorporate breathing and pausing and the various ways that we can try to deal with this dilemma in my life, our lives.
Right. That breathing, pausing, those focusing things, getting back into our bodies can be so helpful when we're triggered. And that idea of being out of control, it's very, very scary to feel that. We're talking a lot about triggered being reacting, and it can also be pulling in, being frozen, being struck down, being instantly discouraged in some basic way, that kind of reaction. I've learned a few things about being triggered in groups, and I want to share them. But I think I'm going to play this little video for you of Isabel talking about her experience of being triggered in a group. And she articulates it so well, the feeling, that I wanted to share that with you and see if you pick up on any of the elements that she's talking about. Does that seem like a good idea?
Sure.
Okay, let's hear Isabel. How is this topic going so far? It's a hard topic, but such an important one. I just wanted to say to Pauline, while we're waiting for the video, I was the one that wrote the description, and not my saying that it pulls community apart wasn't really speaking about just help the helpers, but all community life.
So the experience for me is that when it first happened, or when I first hear it, whatever that is, right? It feels like a personal wound, like I have been wounded, me personally. Somebody has done something to me personally. And it's so visceral and it's so raw that the only space that there is for me in that moment is anger, rage, self-righteousness. Oh, how dare they? Oh, they did this to me. And what happens with that is, in that moment, I cannot see the humanity of the other person. All I'm seeing is how horrible they are. That's all I'm seeing. That's all I'm capable of seeing in that moment. But what I noticed that it's happening for me in this, as we come together in this work, is that as I allow myself to be with the what happened, I'm allowing myself to be with it, the how I was about it begins to shift. In the process of doing the focusing with the other person, right? I get to really bring some of that forward and see what was it, right? And that's the place where then what may come, or what has come for me, is that the hurt, it's not just coming from that moment, right? It's coming from other moments, and it's almost like it creates this new dish.
Yeah. Could you identify with anything that Isabel said there? I see some hearts. I was really identifying with Isabel saying that in that moment, there's just a sense of outrage or hurt and self-righteousness, that it's this other person. And then later on, if I watch the video, or if I focus on it, or I think about it, it has a whole different flavor. That it isn't just that I'm the righteous one and the other person did something outrageous.
Yeah. It's like the unthinkable has happened. Or, you know, the dreaded, the unallowed, it has happened again. And I also thought I heard Isabel talking about the metabolizing of this. And that interests me a lot, because it's like, what do we do with this experience that you feel at the mercy of?
Yes. Yes. What do we do? Let's ask that. What do we do, when we feel at the mercy of being hijacked by a reaction?
Well, I find I do, I guess, my typical thing of obsessing for a while, which seems grueling and like getting no place, like a very dark but a habitual thing. And that can, if I get some help or talk with a person, that can lead to a different kind of sort of being with, a more focusing approach to the problem, to myself, to the other person, where it becomes like you can look at it. You can, there's a little space comes. I think that's the healing. But it's often for me a process that can go on for a long time.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I find that true too. And I like the word metabolizing. And length of time seems to be a real issue here because of our body response, our nervous system response to alarm. That it seems like in the moment, you might be able to breathe. You might be able to ask the question, what is it? Right? That's the question. But you sometimes can't ask that right away when you're alarmed, when it's an emergency. And I think, like you, Susan, I'll start out obsessing about it. And then I'll realize I'm obsessing about it and I'll say, oh, well, let me focus about it. And then I can ask in a very different way, what is it about that? When I ask, what is it about that captured me? It isn't to say it's invalid that I have a reaction. It's just to say, what is it? Did it bring up for me? What did it bring with it? What was the threat? Anybody have any other thoughts about what we can do?
I think trigger is also like a continuum. Is it a lot or is it little? And both in terms of being angered by it or being subdued by it or in whichever direction it goes. And it is like a knot that you have to open. It's a knot.
Yes, a knot that you have to open.
And yeah, in a way, it's kind of gift for us to understand ourselves, when it happens, I think.
It's a kind of signal that something has really happened.
Or a gift, in a way, to see, to widen our understanding, I think.
Right.
And I could follow that with, because it's a gift, so I like to associate the two other words with trigger. So I would prime myself to say fresh emergency here, which require a fresh response, which means a fresh learning. So I use those. It's fresh emergency, fresh situation. It needs a fresh response, a learning response. So I like to link those words.
Right. Right. Even in the moment, sometimes we can say, oh, there's something to learn here. Look at this response I have, right? And there can be something to learn. I wanted to share with you what Kohut talked about in terms of being triggered as a small experience of what he calls narcissistic rage, and that those words have been so ruined. Don't think about them, we all think of the narcissist who's selfish and whatever. That's not what Kohut is talking about. Kohut uses the term narcissism to mean the deep inner self. And a narcissistic injury is like when the deep inner self, who you are, feels wounded. That sets off a reaction in the whole system of yourself, of emergency and protective rage, you know, that will and sometimes what Kohut calls the lust for revenge. It's like in those moments right after we're triggered, when we're obsessing about it. Oh, well, I wish I had said this, and I wish that happened. And it can be a kind of revenge fantasies. And these are very small microcosms. But if we think in terms of the world, the large systems that get taken over in narcissistic rage, like Germany after, after World War I or something like that, we have an appreciation for how this all works in some kind of way. I love that about what Kohut says, that it gives me a sense of, oh, the person seems strong and tough, but really underneath, the person who is in a narcissistic rage is falling apart. It's this reaction to falling apart that we have this big response of protection. And Kohut says that's different than anger. Anger is something that is a signal for us, but anger, one can feel, one can still think when you're angry. When you're triggered with the narcissistic rage response, you can't think. It's like in that moment, you're pouring out, as Jean would say, raw and blind. It's a reaction rather than a response. So those are little things that I've gotten from Kohut that I found very helpful. So when somebody is triggered, they need support to feel back into themselves. And sometimes that's available and sometimes it isn't. But what I notice in groups is that the person that's triggered needs to just be understood. Even if you disagree with the person, that doesn't matter. It's just about understanding what they're getting at, what they're upset from. And the group needs to be the container. We can't expect the person who's triggered to be in dialogue in a rational way. We can't try to convince a person that's triggered that they're wrong, or that they don't have to be reacting that way or anything like that, or what the other person meant. So the group has to be this holding that's understanding the one who's triggered and understanding the one or ones that might be hurt, and to stop the tide of this one gets triggered, that triggers this one, that triggers this one, and then our whole community is wrenched apart, which I've seen in many, many, many groups and movements in my life. That's why I'm studying this phenomenon of being triggered, because I've seen how many, many very well-meaning good groups have gone astray with this being hijacked by being triggered. So let's just have a couple more responses, and then we're going to talk more about it in our breakout rooms.
Can I add, in addition to you referring to the group holding a safe space, I think it's also important, as I see it, to use the phrase someone in the group, because otherwise we get seduced by the bystander effect where, oh, the group will do something. I think it's good to complement that, the group and someone in the group.
Or someone's, might be more than one, right? There's something going on in the group that comes in the trigger, that we want to understand the whole process of the group there. One thing that we could say that's very simple and direct is that we get from focusing is that the most important ingredient for conflict and for triggeredness is deep listening, embodied listening, where we're listening not to what the person is saying, but to what the person is experiencing. We're listening not for the logic, we're listening for what is that person experiencing? Can I put that into words?
I think that's so rare, Lynn, you know, even among therapists. That is one of the rarest commodities, is to find somebody who I am always working with it, and I hate to say fighting myself, but that's the truth, to get to the other level and not stay in the literal. And it's a lifetime's work, really. But I was also struck when you were talking about Kohat, and I probably brought this up once before in one of these, but how when I heard Frank Lockman speak, who was a Kohutian, and he had just written a book on anger, I think, or rage, something like that. And it was a really great talk he gave. And he talks about the case study of the prisoner Gary Gilmore, who had murdered somebody in a gas station after, I think this is the story, after he tried to enroll in college that day and wound up humiliated for one reason or another after a lifetime of misery and humiliation. And he wound up robbing a convenience store and wound up shooting somebody. And Lockman wrote all about that, and just stuck with me all these years that Lockman said that was the only response that this man had available to him. That's all he had left, was a gun and the impulse to shoot it. Right. And so the point was to cut, we have to expand what's available. And I was just struck now, Lynn, when you were saying something, I can't remember the phrase about something about going back to the self, something about the self. And what it made me realize, some selves are like a little baby bird with a broken leg. If that's yourself, and then it really struck something in me when you said, if you have a group, but maybe you don't have a group, but that you need the support of others to do that for you.
Yes.
Because you never developed that self in the first place.
Yes, yes, yes.
Which I think, isn't that the heart of Kohat, really, is developing that self. And if you haven't, your resources are very limited. And you're going to be triggered all the time.
Right. And yes, I love all those points. I love the point that we have to develop the self to hold the triggeredness. But even when we develop the self, we spend a lifetime. I love what you said, Liz, about it. This is a practice of a lifetime, not only dealing with our own triggeredness, but dealing with other people's triggeredness and how their triggeredness triggers us to, you know. But even the most developed of us have triggers, you know, and we can't prevent that. We can just help ourselves in it.
Hi, Lynn. I think that's the realization for me. It's the superiority of even the most developed of us, you know, that there's some sort of a hierarchy of belief. There's a belief that someone that is triggered, that they're a less than, you know. Now, I think that's an ego position, you know.
Right.
And so when Liz, when you were saying developing the self, I think it's developing the culture, you know, that there's an expectation. So maybe a good healthy group that people can trigger. It's not about triggering. It's being safe enough to surrender that sense of separateness, and, you know, that there's a creativity there and a generosity of spirit, you know, so that it's not walking on eggshells. It's not fear-based, in other words, it's creative. So I think that's the aha for me, the realization that somehow you're less than if you are triggered, that you've lost it, you know, and it's a shame. Egg all over your face. And so thanks for that opportunity.
Yeah, that's so important. The linking of shame, and Vera started with that before we even began. That linking shame to being to losing control in any way. I mean, we can feel shame about any loss of control, but especially an enraged loss of control or a terribly hurt loss of control. And what we're trying to do here is to say that it's not that the mature people don't get triggered and the immature people get triggered. When we're saying this is a human phenomenon, and that it's a lifelong practice to help ourselves. But also, I want to underscore what Liz, what you said about how we need help in these moments. We need help. It's sort of like being drunk or something. You can't, somebody has to give you a cup of coffee and a place to sit down, and you have to recombobulate yourself after you're discombobulated.
But when you live in a society, a culture that criticizes weakness and values autonomy and says you're a woke, you know, hothouse flower if you want a trigger warning, or, you know, it's all around us. It's pretty difficult to, you know, to get that kind of a help and not be ashamed.
And that's why I think Pauline was saying it's not as much, or it can be not as much the individual as the culture, that it's within the culture, and we're trying to develop the culture here. Not that we have grandiose intentions, but let's develop our culture. I think we have one more. I think Katerina wanted to say something, and then we're going to go in.
Yes, very quickly.
Yes.
So when we're triggered, we need help, and we can cultivate our help in advance by practicing rituals, practicing focusing, practicing rituals, prayers. So we are preparing ourselves every hour for ritual, for disaster, for being triggered. And when Sophie first spoke, and Vera, about self and not self, my sense of trigger is being split. And then I know it's time to do a ritual, whatever.
What I like from what you just said, Katerina, is that, and what everyone has been saying and hinting and pointing at, Sorry, my name is Michael. I'm from Quebec, and some of you know me. I just put a phrase in the chat which says, reaction level is much too high. I can do without the stimuli. I cannot do without the stimuli. Stimulation will always be there. So there's a phrase that says, don't shoot the messenger. The stimuli is a messenger. My responsibility to not say yes to the trigger. It's a skill to move far away from reflex, the animal reflex. I have to train myself. It's an incredible skill. And we have a beautiful, beautiful tool to do that. We know focusing, but TAE, thinking at the edge, really working at it individually by ourselves and sharing it in groups is the skill to be developed. Otherwise, being overwhelmed is so easy when there's no skill trained. I'm very glad, Lynn, that you're introducing this word trigger, because there's so many different levels to it that I still don't know how to share it from my own experience, but I have so much to say about this. It's a door opening to growth.
Yes.
Growth.
Yes. And I know, Mikhail, you've been studying it, and that it's a very important topic to you and to all of us. Yeah. Okay.
Let's say briefly, I really relate to what Mikhail said. I can sense his passion in this topic. I also want to add a bit of encouragement that my partner and I, when she criticized my driving when I'm doing my best, in previous times I tend to be triggered more regularly, but now I find I'm less triggered by including her in the emergency of driving. So I just want to say that it is actually possible to be less triggered in similar situations by
That's
more
wonderful.
generosity of heart.
I love I love your sharing what triggers you in little ways, because it would be very fun to hear that from everybody, what triggers you. But let's hear from somebody had a hand up.
Bianca. I had my hand.
Yes, good. Let's hear from
Yeah.
you.
I just wanted to share that the year before last, like 3 years ago, I started a trigger journal. So I would write down everything that triggered me. And I had a scale of how triggered I was. And that journal, that process actually brought me to focusing, because I was looking, like Katerina said, I was looking for things that could help me. So I would recommend that practice. It was so eye-opening for me. It really taught me about myself and the world. And yeah, just wanted to share that.
Oh, that's wonderful, really, to have a journal of triggeredness. I want to do that. I think and that introduced you to focusing. So we've had some ideas here about rituals, about practices, about different ways that we can support each other and support ourselves. I think there's a whole art to supporting each other in groups, and I'm hoping that we're developing that art. I see another hand. Oh, it's Orna. Okay. Orna, you will be the last to comment before our breakout rooms. Go ahead.
Okay. I feel that the triggering situation is exactly the breaking point of human trust.
Oh, wow. Triggering
And
is breaking.
so point of human trust, of the trust between the interpersonal trust. So very often it's not so much about safety. I'm again in this safety trust issue, but I would first try to establish trust again, because trust has to do with the person itself. He or she has to create it within herself. And very often, safety is beyond our control, more or less. I mean,
you're our teacher about that, Orna. That safety is beyond our control.
well, it's
Thank
something that I
you.
learned in the recent months. So it's
Yes, yes,
a new understanding.
yes, 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 yes.
So yeah, trust, and sometimes only one person can be trusted, and then the whole group. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's a gradual move.
Find somebody that you could trust to bring trust alive again. Yes.
Right.
Trust, as Doris' brother says, trust is the glue that holds the self together. So if you can find a little grain of trust when you're triggered, that really helps. And it could be, so you're not trusting the person that triggered you, but you can find somebody in the group to trust, or somebody in your life, or somebody that you know of even that isn't in your life.
Sometimes the triggering thing is not, it's a thing, it's a symbol, it's not a person.
Yeah.
And sometimes trusting the process is enough.
Right. Yes. Okay, so we're going to have 15 minutes in our breakout rooms, and then we'll come back together at 9:35. Is that 15 minutes, Christine?
Yep.
Have a good breakout room.
So, everyone coming back.
Welcome back, everybody. So, how was your breakout room? I hear Mary laughing.
So wonderful to have. Can you see some? I'm looking forward to a summary of all the things you raised, Mary. Maybe 4 or 5.
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
Oh, I was enjoying Lip talking about how we can make changes.
Lip, do you want to give a little summary?
Oh, yes. The first thing is Mary said something about she get triggered when people talk about other races or other things not nicely. So I said that I can
Cannot
understand
hear.
because
Cannot hear. Cannot hear.
okay. And then I said that reflect my
Lip, we don't
understanding
hear
that
you. And in 20 minutes, we'll have the tutorial to make the sound loud and clear.
Thank you, Katerina. Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
So
Jim
I
is going
say
to
that
teach us to
Mary
be
get triggered
heard.
because she value very highly the fairness in treating other people fairly. And then there are other instances where I reflect on my driving thing. I've improved because I reflected on many instances and then say that I can learn, and I include my partner in the sense that she's concerned, she's maybe an anxious driver, that maybe being a passenger is different from being a driver. So I open up the perspective. Yeah, so color learning. I think I probably said enough because I want to hear the other people. And Marvin is holding his hand up like this.
Thank you. I don't know if I may. I think that what we point of discussing choice and options. And I will illustrate that. In any laughter, there can be embarrassment. And in every suffering, there can be a gift of self. And in any sorrow, there can be so much love. So the options mean there's not one choice. The choice is there, and if we want to decide on the choice, what is being offered, of what we make of an event, what we make, what we do to ourselves, it's a choice. And we don't need to necessarily make something bad becomes good or something good becomes bad. It's just options.
So you're reassuring us that we do have options there. I think some of us feel we have more options than others, that there's such a unique experience for each person of getting swept away, and some people are slower fused than others are, but we're all quite different. Thank you, Marvin. Your group sounds like you're really getting some help there.
Let me see. I don't know if I'm.
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking that just reminding ourselves of that we do have options is already a step, right? Because we tend to think, oh, I have this one way, I must respond with anger. And this is sort of like Jean talked about slotted emotions. So the society says, oh, this is what you must feel when such and such happens. And he was saying, well, actually, no. We have choices that we don't often let ourselves be aware of. That we don't have to always respond in the way the society has programmed us is the correct way. I've been insulted. Somebody used a slur, so I must get angry. Oh, well, not necessarily. We can say, oh, this person has been brought up a certain way and has certain attitudes, and maybe they can change. We hope so.
Yeah.
Charles, concerning what you're saying, a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, you presented something beautifully in our group here, Helper for Helpers. And maybe after 10 minutes of presenting what you were offering us, you said something, and it kind of awakened my thought about the use of the word reaction. It seems to be used positively and negatively in many different situations, and it creates for me a lot of confusion and it's not because you did something wrong. On the contrary, you were really full of empathy and compassionate when you asked, after having presented what you presented, you asked, well, it would be nice for everyone, maybe if we take a pause in order for anyone to react to what I've just said. And it struck me and said, what do you mean react? Don't you really mean to respond? It's two different things. Reacting is a self-contraction. It's a way to make ourselves suffer. Responding is something that is open, that is sharing something from ourselves. And that's what I was saying is the difference between ignorance in ourselves or self-knowledge, developing the skill to respond. And we are doing this here. And this group, LYNN, has been helping us to learn about this from the beginning. And all of us are participating in it. But it's some words, there's a definition in the dictionary, but there is our own implicit experience of those words, which may be very different. So I just wanted to make the note of this.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. If I used react, that might have just been carelessness.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that, but yeah.
Yeah, it's time for our poems, but let me just say that we're morphing, as we often do in this community, which is so delightful. We're morphing into the very big subject of options, choice, control, and I think we have a continuum here of people who are saying, well, we can have options, control, choice about getting triggered, and people who are saying, well, it's something that happens, and but you can then respond to the situation by grounding yourself or helping yourself, but not necessarily always preventing yourself from having the experience. We have this.
Yeah.
I think Lynn at some point, maybe I think it was you, said we're not responsible for our first reaction, but we are responsible for our second one. Of course, that's a cliche almost, but the point being is that we can have a reaction that we can't help in a way, right? But then we can take a moment and step back and say, oh.
I want to say something sort of provocative but then we have to.
Then we'll get out of a discussion.
But I'd like to say, as my provocative statement, we can't help our first reaction, and the group is responsible for our second reaction.
Maybe we should have a triggering two and develop our ideas about what equanimity is as a form of skill.
Okay, let's hear from Dorothy.
Yes, her poem, the poem.
Okay. This is a poem by a current American poet, and their moments talk about options, where he focuses on moments of joy in the midst of what can trigger us in our society. Swift Glimpse by Marcus Jackson. Upon another stage of survival and recovery, we pause and look ahead or look at each other briefly, distrusting the resumption of the movements, the threats, and the music of our streets. What an empire of unequal labor, misshapen fame, and loves whose tongues retain the flood marks of outswum pain. The truthful protagonist carries a box of brake pads, a C-clamp, and a bus pass. Or they use coupons on toothpaste and soap, or they wash their children's clothes while playing old songs that sound exempt from greed, and their face, in the available light among sidewalks, alleys, and courtyards, can send an onlooker a swift glimpse of the heart's unembellished excellence. And Katerina is putting that in the chat. Thank you, Katerina.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, see you next time. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thank you very much.